overcome. We will overcome. We will overcome someday. Deep in our heart, I do believe we will overcome today.
Thank you, Miss T.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Black and Blurred.
Hi.
That's Darren. I'm Brandon. Guys, part 2. We're here still. Raise your hand if you're still being gaslit. We are here with part 2, and we're talking about some gaslighting.
Yeah.
Last episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, we talked about the conversation of guns, and it's filled with gaslighting.
Yeah.
And we're moving on. Unfortunately, in these episodes, we can't speak exhaustively about these things, but we just want to highlight important aspects of gaslighting.
Yeah. Stuff that you've probably heard and been a part of. And
because it needs to be addressed.
This experiment is on all of us.
yeah, seriously.
It's all of us.
And part of the motivation in this has to deal with the importance on people hearing the truth, especially when they're told to question and doubt it and renounce it over and over again.
Right.
Because we've mentioned it, I guess subtly and briefly, that we went through gaslighting in a different context together, yet separately.
Yeah.
And it leaves you battered.
Well, it has to happen separately, doesn't it?
It does.
That's why this whole thing just keeps us isolated.
Yeah. We have to be divided.
It doesn't want us together. Because then we'll have it figured out.
Yeah. You're not supposed to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And so it leaves you battered, leaves you bitter, it leaves you distraught, it can leave you depressed, it can leave you anxious, it can leave you lacking self-confidence. All these different emotions that I think have been multiplied over the course of this COVID hysteria.
Yeah.
And then all of the things that have been infused into that COVID hysteria that existed outside of the COVID hysteria, but have definitely been multiplied now that we've just been sitting in isolation, and now we have new categories by which we can hate one another based on being vaccinated and not vaccinated. But we're not dealing with that one today.
No, not that one. Not yet.
We're dealing with an oldie, but a goodie. Good old racism.
Yeah, man.
And there's a lot to say about racism.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everything. But our hope is that we touch on some foundations of race, one, and then kind of just touch on some aspects of gaslighting that have covered the conversation on race and how people think about it. And the fact that a lot of the conversation are demands for people to think a certain way about it.
Right.
And then respond based on that thought process. So I think we can start from the jump before we dive into some of the content we have stored up. Let's start from scripture. And from the jump, using the word race is gaslighting. Let me back up. Because I was searching. I was like, let me just give a standard definition, a recap for people what gaslighting is. I believe it's a 1958 film, 50s, I believe, 1958 film. And the shorter version is this: that the husband was gaslighting, adding gas to the candles in the house.
Among a bunch of other things.
Among a bunch of other things, yes. But this is the very short, truncated version.
Yeah.
The wife in the house knew that something was changing with the lighting, and he was telling her she was crazy.
Yeah.
And she began to question her perception of reality as a result of that. So that's a very truncated view of where the term comes from. But I'm going to expand that as far as what it's turned into and how that movie is the poster child for this ideological abuse that we all are under and have been under for some time. But I was quite shocked that Urban Dictionary had a pretty, I think, feasible definition.
Oh, really?
The grammar wasn't good.
Because it's urban.
But it wasn't like that type of urban grammar. It was just poor. It was poor grammar. I'll give you an explanation. So this was their definition.
Come on.
Gaslight. First of all, it says this: when you lie or manipulate someone and make them feel crazy for reacting how they react, and make them believe their gut isn't true. You make them feel like they're
THEIR.
Yeah. They're like over there. You make them feel like they're overreacting once you get them angry or you get them mad, and then make them feel crazy for being mad. Basically, when you manipulate events and situations to make the victim feel crazy and switch the blame. I think that's
So eloquently put.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's sufficient. It's sufficient. People can understand, and it's relatable. And I'm sure that people have been in isolated situations like that, that don't have to be like overly orchestrated, but it's still gaslighting nonetheless. It's emotional abuse.
Yeah.
In some instances. Wikipedia says this: the term may also be used to describe a person who presents a false narrative to another group or person, which leads them to doubt their perceptions and become misled, generally for the gaslighter's own benefit, disorienting or distressed. Generally, this dynamic is only possible when the audience is vulnerable, such as in unequal power relationships, or when the audience is fearful of the losses associated with challenging the false narrative. Gaslighting is not necessarily malicious or intentional, although in some cases it is. Get some snaps for our.
I wonder which one we're experiencing.
Democratic Socialist Convention. Oh no, they don't snap. Or do they do?
Yeah, they do the sensory thing.
Yeah, they wave their hands.
And that's really important.
I remember we were taught that in elementary school for people who are deaf.
Yeah, it's an applause.
I never once heard that was for people who didn't like the sound of a clap.
Yeah.
And I know sensory, what's it called?
Kenny's probably
sensory
saying it right
sensitive.
Now.
I know Kenny's probably correcting us right now. Forget you, Kenny. We don't know. But I did a class with Chan. I did a class with our very good friend. Who is a teacher and who has a gift of dealing with people who actually have special needs from every spectrum, every form of the spectrum, whether high motor or very low motor. Just has a gift in patience and empathy in doing that stuff. I was watching her teach this class, and I was thinking she has no idea how many people don't want to do this.
Yeah,
and how much of a gift that is. Okay, that was an aside. But yeah. Okay, all that was just being done so I could troll the socialist democratic.
Yeah, no, yeah.
That was pointless. So that was our definition of gaslighting, guys. And that's something that we're going through, and we've been going through for some time. And we've been going through these things even when it comes to race and racism. Oh, I forgot to pull it up. Pull this up. Just the classical definition of racism. I don't want to speak from my own. I was pull it up.
Oh, you want me to pull it up?
Yeah.
Classical.
Yeah. I know.
Today?
Use DuckDuckGo. Just find something because like Oxford and Webster, they will give multiple definitions.
Won't let me type duck.
But while Darren's looking that up, this is what I want to lay the foundations with, the scriptures, and where this idea of ethnicities even comes from. These different people groups, different people groups are introduced for the very first time in Genesis 10, and then in ancient narrative fashion, that introduction is explained in Genesis 11. A lot of people kind of get caught up with the way Genesis does that sometimes, where you have the identification of one thing, and then you have the explanation of it that comes after, and they think that this is chronological, that this is happening chronologically, and it's not. Genesis 10 is giving you the identification of these different nations, but Genesis 11 is giving you why that is the case, why these nations exist. And so once again, truncated version due to time, if you go through Genesis 10, you will see all these different nations listed out, and it's 72 in total. And in Genesis 11, it gives a narrative on what happened there. And what happened in Genesis 11, if you're familiar, if you've had any time in Bible study school, you've heard the story of the Tower of Babel. And typically in Bible children's church or wherever you've called it, Sunday school, they tell the story of the Tower of Babel, and people built this really big tower, and God got angry and he spread them out and he switched up their languages, and boom, you have different nations. And it's like, well, that seems wanting, and you feel like you need more of an explanation. And the scriptures, they give you that explanation, but it's hidden in the historical context. It's hidden in the cultural context. It's hidden in all those things until understanding it. One, what was this tower that was built? It was a ziggurat. What does a ziggurat use? It was a big temple. That's what it was. The higher it was, the more godly it was, the more accessible to the gods it was. That's what was believed. And so the desire to build this ziggurat was an invocation to false gods. Once upon a time, the people on the face of the earth were one people. And God declared they were his people, essentially. Mm-hmm. Even though the relationship was still broken, they weren't split up. They were all one people with one trail happening there. And so this being one people apparently led to one people wanting to have a name or a reputation or a authority or a whatever. What's another synonym? Like, you'll put some respect on my name. Whatever. You get the drift. Wanting to have a name greater than God. Mm-hmm. Wanting to make a name greater than God. And so obviously this isn't good for mankind, because as we've been talking about on this podcast, the evils of mankind, it would be even worse if we came together and plotted and unified for the purposes of our sin.
Right.
How terrible that would be. So God in his grace divided us up, but not only did that division happen, he disinherited the people from being his people, having access to him, having a desire to worship him. That's why you have these false gods. That's why you have these false religions. Some of them, a lot of the older ones like Buddhism and Hinduism and, all these very older than Christianity things. That's why they exist. But that disinheritance finds its reversal, the beginning of that reversal, in his choosing Israel as his people. But Israel will be his portion. And through Israel, the whole plan was for the Messiah to be born through his people, so that through the Messiah, the people who were once disinherited all around the earth would come back into the fold and be his people again. So through the Jews, the Gentiles would become sons and daughters again. And so it's just a complete reversal. The Messiah is reversing that. So that's where you get this idea of race. But the term race is false.
Right.
There's one. Mm-hmm. Human
race.
Biblically speaking, you can argue there's two. The seed of Adam and the seed of the serpent. Or the seed of the serpent and the seed of Christ. The seed of the woman. You could argue two races from a theological standpoint. People of the world, people of the kingdom. But I don't go further than that. I don't go further than that. What definition you come up with?
Racism, a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So what's very wild about that is that the people who espouse racism
are the ones that
who are racist.
Attribute the race. Yeah, that's what people. Yeah.
They're quite racist. So guys, find some time and read through Genesis 10. It's laborious. It's a lot of names, but just reflect on it. Find a commentary to read through Genesis 10 to explain what's happening there. Read through Genesis 11, a commentary to read through Genesis 11 to explain what's happening there. This is the history of nations. In the Greek and the New Testament, ethnos, where we get our word ethnicity from. Race, it's made up. It's a facade. It doesn't exist. If you are a Christian, then the way that we have this conversation is by seeing it accurately first. Since we were just talking about this in Bible study. Colossians, since then, Christ has been seated in the right side in the heavens. Let our minds be seated in the heavens where Christ is.
Mm-hmm.
Let us see things accurately. Do not let people deceive you with empty speech. Yeah. Don't let people deceive you. And so we need to see this accurately.
You ain't black.
and that comes right there in the next chapter in Colossians. But so let's move on. Because we got some stuff. We got some stuff in this conversation of race. Gosh, we just did a quick overload. I don't even know where to start because it's just so much.
There's a lot. We can start with the first clip that we played.
Oh, that's true. We need to address what that is, true. But real quick, let's touch on, kind of break down a little bit what that definition you just read.
Oh.
Of racism.
Yeah. So
read that one more time for the people in the back.
A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race.
Right. So that means
CRT.
Yeah. Well, and so to be clear on what you're saying is proponents of CRT are racist.
This is what they are doing.
They're racist. Yeah. I think a simplified view is an inherent belief that one race is superior than all others, or others are inferior to yours or another race.
Yeah. And another definition, it says the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, specifically white supremacy.
Yeah.
That's the definition of racism we'd like to use today.
Right. Because also what's being gaslit and how we're being gaslit regarding the conversation on race is that the sinful trait of humanity, that is to be biased and to show partiality is inherent in European ethnicities.
Yeah.
European only.
Yeah.
Ethnicities. Not only European only, but post-Revolutionary War European ethnicities.
Yeah.
How stupid that is. How stupid. So yeah, let's explain to the people what that terrible ensemble of notes was that we listened to.
Oh yeah, that was the Texas Democrats. They're singing "We Shall Overcome." Because
while you're explaining this, I'm about to pull up "We Shall Overcome" and who wrote it and why.
They wanted to. They're opposing voting rights, or voting laws, I guess, or voting requirements, voting, whatever you want to call it. The Texas Democrats don't want voting regulations. For example, the voter ID. They didn't want Texas to start implementing that you have to have an ID to go vote. They also don't want to implement Texas. They also don't want to implement laws about drop boxes and mail-in voting. So that what they're saying is that all of those things, those voter ID, drop boxes, mail-in voting, those are all racist because they target black people. And so what do? They stand up and say a black people song.
Yeah. It's so comedic and heartbreaking simultaneously. Perfectly comedic and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the way it sounds is just I think an audible illustration of the way it looks.
Yeah. That's gaslighting to the max. They got black people believing that it's true.
Yeah.
There are some black people that believe that that's true. And there's a lot of non-black people who believe that that's true about black people.
Yeah, they do. We have some clips to talk about that too.
And that's what's really heartbreaking is that people are really bought into that.
Right.
They've bought into the fact that for some reason black people just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
to vote, man.
And as we bring up these clips and we talk about these things, try to remember that definition that Darren read. Try to remember that. Go back and listen to that definition, write it down, or just look it up yourself and keep that in mind. Of that is the classical definition of racism. So if those are your held beliefs, you by definition are a racist.
Yeah.
You by definition are a racist. Keep that in mind. So I did find his name was Charles Tinley. I feel like we should have known this. Maybe we learned it in school or something like that.
Did.
From Maryland.
It doesn't apply to us. That's why we didn't learn it. We've overcome Christians in a lot of ways.
That's true.
As black people.
So this quick article I found on Christians for Social Action. When the Reverend Charles Albert Tinley first wrote We Shall Overcome, he had no idea of the far-reaching and enduring impact his song would have on people all over the planet seeking basic human rights and freedom. So Charles Tinley was born to a former slave and a free woman in Maryland. Let me skip down a little bit because this is a lot. I just wanted to give a quick little glimpse of it. But he was a minister to one of the largest churches in the city and one of the few in Philadelphia where a number of white Americans joined the congregation for worship. Tinley worked with politicians and business leaders to assist his members in finding employment. He promoted heavily the importance of home ownership and advised people to begin their own businesses and be self-employed. Let me pause real quick. I didn't even mean to pause.
Yeah,
but the Democrats of the day would hate this dude.
Yeah, I know.
They would hate him.
They would hate Martin Luther King. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah. Gaslit. All you got to do is lie. Just lie about him.
You got a
use his
Republican
name.
black man
Yeah.
going around talking about freedom
Yeah.
and loving one another?
Right. And also
Kill him, man.
as the future goes on, we will see less and less of the white Americans that walked and fought with them during that time.
Yeah.
So that we can keep hating each other. But yeah, let me continue on. I didn't expect for this article to be spitting these bars like this, but because this isn't Democratic talk.
No, it's not.
Or Democrat talk.
Democrat talk.
This is a Democrat talk. Democrat talk is about victimization and dependency. Right? And so therefore you need healing that only we can provide and free stuff that only we can provide. And Tinley apparently isn't on that train as the son of a former slave.
Right.
Let's keep going. And also the song is We Shall Overcome, not You Shall Help Us. You shall help us get up. Tinley also used his influence to address issues of racism. In 1915, he led a group of African Americans to the Forest Theater where they protested the showing of the recently released film. Can you guess?
Selma?
Get out. Birth of a Nation.
Oh, okay. That'll work.
Oh, did I bring that up?
Yeah, last episode.
Did I?
Yeah.
Birth of a Nation or the thing I'm thinking about?
Birth of a Nation.
Okay, I'm gonna read this first.
I don't know what you're thinking about.
I know. I'm gonna read it first. Oh, I definitely should have prepared that for this episode. We might have to do just a standalone thing for this for Patreon because I told you about it. I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna finish reading this. I'm gonna finish reading this. So he protested the showing of a recently released film, The Birth of a Nation. Now, I'm going to readdress it again. For those who don't know, Birth of a Nation is a gaslighting film, propaganda, the first shown in the White House, depicting black Americans as savages and rapists so that people can be afraid and so that the government can help clean it up.
Yeah.
Now, we already know what the people were afraid of. They were afraid of the Negroes coming and raping their women and their daughters. How did the government help? The Democrats provided the Ku Klux Klan. Check our history.
Yeah.
Just check the history.
Yeah.
Okay. The film was controversial across America and offensive to African Americans because it presented black men as unintelligent and disrespectful toward white women. So if we changed out white women and put ballot box, that's 2022. As well, the Ku Klux Klan was portrayed as a noble, patriotic, heroic movement in American history. At the protest, Tinley and his group were viciously attacked by mobs of whites who beat them with clubs, sticks, and bottles. Many were injured and required hospitalization. Tinley was one of the injured, but was treated at home. So I'm just going to end that there because this is a pretty long article. This is from Christians for Social Action. I'll try to remember to add this link at the bottom of our video. But his song, We Shall Overcome, has a different tone.
Yeah.
Has a different background than today.
Yeah.
So this is what I meant. I think I did bring this up to you. And maybe listeners, you've seen it too. But there's a video, and it's not like a video somebody captured with their phone. I'm talking about this is a directed and produced video trying to teach Americans the truth. And it shows a white woman going up to these black boys on a basketball court. And she's acting as a Karen. She's being a Karen who carries a whip
It hits them.
and whips them.
Yeah, man. Yikes. That's not cringy. I don't know what it is. That's a rough one.
What?
It's pretty rough. That's not it. That's not how
Are you being serious though? I don't even know.
Yeah. That's rough.
So let me let you straight. But we're definitely gonna have to watch that. I mean, we're gonna have to. Yeah, we're gonna have to watch that. Yeah, we're gonna watch that. So let's go through some of these things.
The Ami on the street.
Yeah. And let's just listen because of all of the information that we've been fed about race and about what's true about race, and then how every circumstance has been twisted to reflect on race. We were all just talking upstairs with my wife, and I don't know if any of you have heard about the tragedy. I think it was in Texas. There was a tragedy where there was a violent man who was attacking people at a mall. Police came and stopped the man by shooting him. Bullets passed by him and went into a dressing room, past him, and hit and killed a 14-year-old girl. It's tragic.
That is their fault. Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, that is tragic.
Not racist.
It's not racist. Meanwhile, that's the tone that Jesse Jackson or
Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton is spinning. He gets up and he starts talking about how long will our people be shot down in the streets by police. Why is he speaking that way? Because he hates you.
Yeah.
And he wants your money.
Yeah. And he's a professional
He
gaslighter.
hates you.
Yeah,
I would love if we were famous. I'm sure we would be famous for like a day before people try to kill us or something like that. But I'm just saying, if I could get face to face, I just really genuinely want to be one of the very few sincere people who stand in his face and say, Al Sharpton, I don't know you, but you are hatred, and you need Jesus. You spew hatred, but maybe the Lord will give me that chance. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm on the street.
Hit him with
I'm on the street. He'll talk forever.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and I'm here in Berkeley, California to find out if voter ID laws suppress the black vote. Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're.
So real quick, because the way that they're talking
is like, duh.
Yeah, racism is rampant.
Yeah,
and prolific.
Duh.
Now, in the hearts of men, all throughout the world,
of course.
I think rape is prolific. I think rape is actually more prolific than racism.
Yeah.
But they're speaking as if like, the world is, they just on their way to school, they just walked and they saw slaves in the backyard, and they're like, I'm just.
Do you remember growing up 20 years ago at our house where we grew up in, and our parents like, oh my goodness, man, we can't vote.
Yeah, no.
I mean, and here we are, 20 years later.
Yeah, 20 years later,
and we got these kids in college who can barely vote yet, complaining about voting.
Yeah.
If that's not gaslighting, I don't know what is.
Just to give you guys context, and you can be able to see this on our video. Actually, we might start making our full videos only available to Patreon subscribers. And just do clips, but we'll know. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But you can see that they aren't Black Americans. Just for context, you need that. You need that because the way that we talk about race and the way that the media gaslights us, it also prevents us from wanting to talk to one another.
Right. It isolates us.
And also the conversational race, since we've been gaslit into believing that racism isn't an inherent belief system regarding other ethnicities, now the conversation or the definition has been changed to this inadvertent slip up. Like you can trip and fall.
You can fall into racism. Yeah.
And so therefore you don't want to have a conversation with someone which will expose ignorance. And that's all knowledge ever does.
Right.
It's meant to expose ignorance and then disinvite it from the conversation next time. Knowledge does that. So continue. Or what were you about to say?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they get identification.
You don't get IDs.
What do you got? I almost threw my mic again.
And that's it, right?
I almost threw.
These types of people don't have. I mean, that's it right there. Whatever you're about to say after that is not good, sir.
So we should probably touch on something we talked about upstairs. Keep going.
If Donald Trump, gaslighting again, if Donald Trump said anything nearly as close to that.
If Donald Trump said anything nearly as close to what Joe Biden has said.
Yeah, I know, but we can't get there yet.
I know.
We'll get there
I'm just
one
saying,
day.
that's gaslighting.
You ain't black.
Yeah.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
That's complete gaslighting.
And so.
But bless his heart, right? Because he's ignorant.
He's ignorant, yeah. He's being told this.
And so now this is something, this is why we're willing to get hatred from our black and brown skinned brothers and sisters and our white and lighter skinned brothers and sisters. Because this is a team effort.
Yeah.
This foolishness and this stupidity.
Yeah. I mean,
y'all working together on this one.
Did we say this is a college campus?
No, maybe, but this is a college campus.
Some of it's a college campus. You have some professors and then you have some students. And so this is, active indoctrination. These people, these kids have been told this. This is not something they've experienced.
Yeah.
Where did he say he was? Some California?
Maybe. I don't know.
San Bernardino, California. This ain't no race film.
But yeah. I mean, so here's the cultural thing. These cultural differences, and this is what we address. I'm curious at how many people watched the clip that I posted on Instagram and where they saw us just kind of shut off while the woman on The View was in mid-speak. And if they knew exactly what was going on, her tone and her condescension that we addressed is something that flies by, but it's that tone and condescension that's built from an inherent belief that someone is inferior to you.
Right.
Without you knowing you even have that. And which is so odd because all you have to do now is do some penance and you don't have to address that belief. Meanwhile, if we can talk to strangers and we can just have a heart-to-heart conversation as man and woman, then ignorance will be exposed and we'll learn about one another and we'll actually grow in relationship. Right. And the politicians don't ever want that.
All these conversations are had on social media.
Yeah.
There are no, and even when you try to invite people to have them in person,
they don't want to.
They don't want to.
Because
part of them knows that the truth will be exposed.
Right.
That's whether it's the truth about what they really feel in their heart, or the truth that what they are saying, they don't really believe it and it's a lie.
Yeah. And shout out to those non-black people, white Americans who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Shout out to them who are willing to be in spaces not dominated by white Americans in order to learn and grow. Because even if you're uncomfortable with talking about it right now, I will say it for you. Black people racist too, dog.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
They racist too. Yeah. It's sin. It's human. It's brokenness.
It's hatred.
It's hatred. It's what it is.
We had like a lot of Africans in our old church who would say, racism.
Yeah.
Everybody in our country was black.
Yeah, right.
And we saw people get treated terribly.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
I always give the example growing up in the city, we saw more black people mistreating Asian Americans than we did white people mistreating black people.
Always. But you can't talk about that because the whole motivation is to gaslight, for you to doubt your perception of reality. And so now you have a lot of white Americans out here seeking salvation through servitude.
Yeah.
And they won't get it because the people who have adopted the narrative that they are a victim, oh, we're not letting you off the hook.
No.
Cracker.
Yeah, right.
You're not getting let off the hook. I'm never going to let you off the hook.
Right. Right.
You will never be saved through your servitude. So there's something we did address in
We got two interviews.
I know,
this video.
I know. We might have to break this up, but but there's something that could easily there's a cure to some of this ignorance that we're hearing and that we're going to continue to hear.
Thank you.
I do think that it is valid to believe that Black Americans are probably more likely to learn how to maneuver in predominantly white spaces.
I lost.
You lost what?
See, all that time I was paying attention, I put it down for 2 seconds and I lose.
You lose what?
I was bidding on a fig tree. We go ahead. It's gone forever.
I can't believe you.
This is a rare variety I won't ever get again.
Well, I'm glad.
Goodness.
I lost my train of thought now. All you have to do is if you have Black Americans, they are more prone to probably spend more time in majority white spaces than a white American spend time in majority black spaces, right? Or another minority in the country space. And so you learn how to maneuver, you learn the different tones, you learn what's acceptable, you learn cultural differences. Like we pointed out that one cultural difference is that, people in majority white spaces, they all, no matter what age or creed, call each other their first name.
So, yeah, some of them.
And that's a cultural still. It's not a skin color thing.
No, it's not. It's not.
That's still cultural.
Yeah.
Because you can go certain places in the country where they're all white Americans and it's sir and ma'am. But still, in this part of the country, culturally speaking, in a majority white American space, people are all first name basis, except for young mom and dad. And then, you get a girlfriend in high school and then your girlfriend and boyfriend are calling your parents by their first name. Sweetie, call me ma'am.
Right. Yeah.
But what we were saying is in school, put it down.
I can't believe that. I can't. So,
but in high school, or in public school, you learn the tones that are acceptable and the tones that aren't acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
They teach you that.
Yeah, your peers. Your peers will teach you.
Yeah. Your peers teach you about respect. Black Americans value respect. They value respect. Some people in an unhealthy way, some people in a noble way. And even if it's unhealthy or noble, you can tell when it isn't there. You can tell when
your antennas go up.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
The different tones and the different inflections and the way that you speak about someone. It's like, oh, your respect is lacking. And in public school, you learn for free the consequences of lacking that respect. And then you learn to maintain it, no matter who you're speaking to. But so all that to say, they need some respect.
Oh, man. Yeah, because he hasn't understood what he said. I think it's going to play again. I mean, just listen. What he's saying is these types of people don't, whatever he's saying after that doesn't matter. But these types of people just don't have. And that seems like something that he's been told. It's not something he's experienced or seen happen. It's something he's been told, so he feels comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
He thinks he's being an ally. Ugh.
Described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
I also think there's a repression of black voting with
how if you're a convicted felon, like you're not allowed to vote and everything.
Oh,
And when we look
yeah.
at some
Preach
states
up.
like Florida, that's a huge population.
What you got?
Oh man, just only black people felons, man.
Yeah. Like Martha Stewart.
Golly, that's all I got. I mean, just it's those things, right? You hear that? It's subtle.
But that's the language that's
It's
being
subtle.
spoken on TV.
Yeah, it's subtle, and they are being taught to be little racist minions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What did Joe Biden say? He says that poor kids deserve an education just as much as white kids.
Oh, yeah, he's saying poor kids are just as smart and intelligent as white kids.
Yeah.
That's a rough one.
This is how we think about race. It's been handed to us.
Come on.
Yeah, let's run it.
Of the like African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes. Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so like, we know what we need to carry around.
Yeah, everybody that I know have ID. Like, that's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, ID.
Do you know?
So what makes me angry is that while they're going through this, they can't put two and two together and say, hey, the people you're told to champion and celebrate are the ones leaving you in this perplexed state right now.
Right. Right.
Where you're valued as, I mean, helpless rodents of society.
Yeah.
Little pets that need to be lifted up.
And what we are doing right now is I am you know what I mean? Like we grew up in the city. Politics wasn't something people talked about.
No.
We heard about politics when the voting cycle came through. And so where is he at? East Harlem? How much are they hearing about politics? Are they even hear this stuff? You know what I mean? Do they see the We Shall Overcome? Do they see the Joe Biden speeches? Do they see that stuff? No. They hear about it when it's the election cycle coming around and they go vote. And they see Diddy, go vote.
Yeah. And they go to the churches, the black churches.
Right. And they see Charlamagne the God, yo, black people, make sure y'all go vote. And then they go vote for the people who they've always voted for.
Yeah. But meanwhile, even with talking about, what's that guy's name? Tinley. This is just a typical citizen of the United States who had values, values that are inflammatory today.
Yeah.
Values that are offensive today.
And that's true about a lot of conservative
This is a
Democrats.
black conservative Christian man who wrote the song We Shall Overcome.
Yeah.
And the values he had are values that are destroyed and ridiculed and slandered today by the people singing the song We Shall Overcome.
Yeah, man.
I'm sick of it.
I know.
I
think we get. I mean, he doesn't evolve anymore.
That's it. I mean, you get it. There's you got white people saying black people can't do this, and black people saying yes, we can.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Yeah, we do it now.
We're doing it. So it seems. So you mentioned 20 years ago, and I don't know. Maybe we were adults. Maybe the race conversation was still being incubated by the race hustlers and.
Well, I'm sure it was.
Kept on life support like Benjamin.
Well, once again, like I said, we were.
Booker T. Washington.
What are you saying? We were in the city. Politics. It certainly wasn't like it is today, where everyone we know is talking about politics.
Yeah.
You know? There was no social media. There wasn't. You know, people. You had to talk to one another. I remember our parents going to vote. They put us in strollers, whatever, had us hold strollers, and we going to Forest Park High School, right?
Or Liberty,
which is walking distance, by the way.
Yeah,
it wasn't hard.
Distance. Yeah, no subway needed.
Yeah, libraries everywhere, walking distance. Any, post offices, they all had ballots.
Those are also different schools in our neighborhood that are now all being shut down.
Yeah,
and our neighborhood is still blue.
Oh yeah,
it's been blue our entire lives. Go ahead.
But yeah, so we never heard our parents or any adult complaining about the access to voting. It was difficult, or not having IDs or anything like this.
Right.
If that was an issue, if it's an issue now that needs to be changed, that means it must have been an issue 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It had to have been.
Right.
We're just hearing about it now. All of a sudden, this new racism has happened. And what they're trying to say is, Donald Trump did that.
Yeah. And so, you know what's interesting? I am in agreement. And even as I recollect historically, I'm in agreement with Dr. Vodi Bakum on where the race conversation, that's always been extant. Mm-hmm. And even the gaslighting regarding race has been extant in the country. But it got a shot of steroids.
Mm-hmm. 2008.
The narrative is that steroid came in 2016.
Right.
And I believe it came 8 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is him talking about it very briefly in a sermon he gave on cultural Marxism. More of a talk he gave on cultural Marxism. I like to distinguish sermons from talks. But let me play this.
I started writing about cultural Marxism in the early 2000s, somewhere around 2005, 6, 7. Blogged about it intensely in 2007 during the election because of what I saw as the incredible threat of Barack Obama, who was a massive cultural Marxist. And in my opinion, then and now, a dangerous man on a number of fronts and for a number of reasons. And so, I ended up, some of you may have seen an interview that I did on CNN before the election, talking about, some of these issues.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's interesting.
So this is him on CNN in 2007, where, the conversation was Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was the target. Are you looking at another tree?
Yeah, it's okay.
Darren,
it's okay.
You've got to be kidding me.
We're doing this. I'm very focused. I can do it, unlike you.
Really? Why don't you have a fig tree? The one you just got?
Well, because I've been putting all my heart and soul to this, man.
So Sarah Palin was the bullseye. She was the target.
Right.
I forget but I remember the conversation. She was stupid.
Yeah. Airy and
I can see my house from Russia or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Something dumb.
It was also SNL.
And they
That's
dragged
SNL,
her daughter into something too.
Right. But see, this is him. Vodi Bakum was invited on CNN, and Lord knows CNN had no idea who they were inviting on.
I'm sure they did.
That's wild. So I'm going to play that clip real quick.
The bottom line on that is people look at this ticket and their fear is that we will have Barack Obama as our president, that we will be moved toward a socialist agenda, that we would have the most radically pro-abortion candidate ever to run for president to serve in that office. And that is an untenable position for evangelicals. And so they look at this and they're trying to decide this based on what's best for the nation in the here and now.
I only got to...
Now, that was a short clip of him in his interview on CNN.
Yeah. What are you about to say? Go ahead.
I just want to say that right there is just a little brief commentary on the waveriness of the church in the United States.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things that he's saying right now in the front end before I went to that clip of the interview. The things he's saying in the front end about Barack Obama, he said during those times. But it was hateful.
It was hateful, yeah.
Because Barack Obama is potentially the first black president.
Yeah.
And we have to care that he's the first black president because black people are less viable than we are. And with there being a black president, that could mean something extremely special. Now, not for granted, let me step outside of that sarcasm. It would be special.
It would be.
But only a racist would desire for Barack Obama to be treated differently.
Right.
Than any other president.
Right.
Only a
vice president now.
Yeah. Only a racist would actually want that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be hostily or more benevolently. But both those desires are born from a racist root.
Yeah.
Based on the definition we read.
I was just going to say, some of you listening might just be shocked by what he said.
Yeah.
Might not like it at all.
Yeah.
I would say you look into it. What does he mean by Barack Obama is a dangerous man or he's Marxist?
Yeah.
I would look into it.
And well, that plays into even our conversation on race. The conversation on race is but a device.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Marxist device.
Puts up a wall. And I don't know what angle you're taking. But
Go ahead.
I would say, specifically with Barack Obama, his race put up a wall so that people wouldn't investigate. So he couldn't be evil if he's a black man, right? Mm-hmm. There's no need to look any further. Why are you trying to push this black man out? He has to be good. He's the first black president. So we don't want to look into anything that could discredit him or anything that could ruin his presidency.
Yeah.
And his family's beautiful, man. We don't want to ruin that.
Yeah. Those are the focus points.
Yeah.
And they're purely American.
Mm-hmm.
They're purely American. You step outside of this country and you go to countries filled with black people and brown people, and you'll be shocked at some of the opinions they have about the Clintons and Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be shocked about those things because the world is actually still moving.
Right. Yeah.
While our favorite celebrity TV shows are running, their stories on our presidents.
We out here pretending about racism. We're pretending about racism.
Yeah.
While we're over here pretending that men are women and women are men, and pretending that abortion is good, and pretending all this gaslighting we're doing over here. Meanwhile, in other countries, life is really happening.
And we talked about on a previous episode. If you haven't listened to this episode yet, I forget what we called it. What's going on, or what we're witnessing. If you haven't listened to that little series, what we're actually witnessing, go listen to that, because we talk about these things regarding the goal of Marxism and how it divides people up. And there's a principle in that regarding its tactics called Hegelian Dialectics. And it's influenced by Karl Marx and Charles Darwin. And so essentially you have the thesis or the narrative. Then you have an antithesis, which is some bad news, some issue, some threat, something to be angry about, something to be scared about. And then you have the synthesis. And the goal is to get to the synthesis and then to rinse and repeat. And so whatever you have going on in society, there needs to be a narrative that says, hey, there's about to be an interruption to the way society works. However, we're willing to help. And so if in 20 years ago, this cycle happens and the answer is something that would never be allowed if anyone just got in office and said, hey, I'm going to do these things.
Yeah.
If someone got in office and they said, hey, you know what, a part of my ticket, I'm just going to have people show their documentation about all their medical history. No one would vote for that.
No.
But now that there's been an interruption in our story and there's fear, you say, hey, so that you don't die and so that your children don't die, show your documentation of your medical history.
Yeah.
And then people accept it. That's the synthesis. And then in 5 years, there's going to be something else. And there's going to be another thing that people are willing to address, to acquiesce to. And then more and more. And that cycle goes on and on and on and on. And so race is just another one of those devices where it's an interruption in our society. Hey, black people, you want to live free and a flourishing life, but these white people are holding you down. Don't worry. We'll fix it. And here's ways we can fix it. Rule number 1, always vote for us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's silly. And you know what? The irony is that they are going to Democratic cities, talking about voter suppression, or Democrat cities where talking about voter suppression. Who's doing the suppression if they're run by Democrats?
That's another thing. That's gaslighting. Like,
what are you talking about?
In our society, like
a lot of these cities.
That's what I thought you were going to talk about.
Like Democrat cities that are Democrat cities. There's only a few. Like he's in Georgia with his last speech.
Joe Biden's president.
But I know. He's in Georgia. Georgia hasn't always been a Democrat state.
No.
But Atlanta has always been a Democrat city.
Always.
For the last 50 or 60 years at least. So if there's voter suppression, who's doing it? Is it Republicans?
Right.
Who's being suppressing votes?
Who's being suppressed?
Yeah. Or is it just not happening? You know what I mean? Like,
who's being suppressed?
It's just not real.
Yeah, because which one is true? Are you the most popular? And are you saying that black people hate you? Or are you saying that no black person voted? Or are you saying that they all love you?
Right. Which is it?
Yeah, which is it?
Also, Barack Obama won 2 terms.
Yeah. So which one is it?
What are we talking about?
Gaslight. Another form of gaslighting is the fact that we're not allowed to talk about the insurmountable amount of questions that came from the last election.
Yeah. They got to mention it in every speech.
Yeah, you're not allowed to actually ask those questions and dive into
so
that.
ridiculous to believe that Donald Trump lost the election. I mean, or that he, that he was frauded in the election. It's so crazy to think that. And this is, what was the term again?
What?
Projecting? No. What is it when you blame shifting?
Yeah, blame shifting.
Right. So he's talking about voter suppression, and as we mentioned, a lot of these places are Democrat cities. Meanwhile, you have an election where Joe Biden got 81 million votes, and there's a bunch of Republicans with affidavits saying my vote was suppressed.
Yeah, and we don't care.
My vote was changed. And you go, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're crazy. You Trumper.
Gaslight.
You Trumper. You're crazy. There was no voter suppression. Joe Biden's the most famous president in U.S. history.
Yeah, U.S. history. Yeah.
So you can believe that if you want to.
Right. And what you're referencing is his speech.
Who?
Joe Biden's speech, where he's referencing voter suppression and all that stuff, right?
Well, all of it. I'm just talking about all of it. I mean,
all of it, yeah.
He mentions it as well. But almost every speech from Joe Biden, when he talks about voting laws, he has to bring up either January 6th or how ridiculous it is that Donald Trump thinks that he didn't lose. And he has to keep saying that because some people believe that it's ridiculous.
Right.
Like, why would the government, you guys are the ones trying to thwart our democracy. It's a constitutional republic. You guys are the ones trying to thwart our democracy. You know what I mean? So it can't possibly be them.
Another form of gaslighting under this umbrella of racism is the constant equivocation between a lot of things that don't deserve these equivocations. Like racists. Okay, wrap up. Racists exist. They're real.
Yeah.
Racism exists. It's real. But to call having an ID to vote racism and then likening it to Jim Crow laws is to diminish what happened
Actual racism.
during Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And what people fought against.
Well, he was for Jim Crow.
He was. Gaslighting. Joe Biden was on the side of segregationists. Gaslighting. Joe Biden was a Democrat in the times where Democrats were proud of their racism. Thank you for listening to this episode of Black. We'll have to continue on because we have more. But guys, we hope you stay tuned. Look into these things. Well, stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 of race
gaslighting.
We got a lot.
It goes on forever.
But we appreciate you guys tuning in this episode of Black and Blurred, where you're guaranteed to hear one of two things: our humble opinion
or the facts.
Holler.